guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I am going to be reviewing another budget. So if you're completely new to my channel, this is something that I started at the beginning of this year. So some of you have sent through your budgets for me to have a look at and give you some tips and things that I would probably work on. So we've got a budget that we're going to be reviewing, and if you would like me to review your budget, I'll make sure the link is in the description below for you so that you can send me your budget too. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so let's have a look at this budget first. Now I can see that they have split this into two different sections. They've got a budget for their joint account, so it will be with themselves and their partner, and then we also have the personal account as well. So I quite like the color coordination. I think the color is quite nice, and I do like the way they've split their budget as well. So they've got a section for their income, then they've also got a section for needs. So I assume these are going to be things that they actually have to pay for, so things like their essential bills. Then they've also got wants, so these will be more like discretionary spending, and then they've also got a section for their debt and also some savings as well. And in the personal account I can see it's quite similar. They've got the income, then they've got needs and wants, and also they've got some other goals. So let's have a look in more detail to see what's happening when it comes to the numbers. Okay, so I'm first of all going to have a look at the joint account. So I assume what's happening is because this person has their personal account and their salary, I assume what's happened is that they both get paid, and they both get paid into their separate accounts, and then they have a joint account where they have joint bills to pay for, and they will then contribute a certain amount. Because this person has their partner putting in 1,670 and themselves putting in 1,100, I would assume that they've maybe divided the amount that they have to put into this pot by their income. So it could be that the partner is earning more, so they're obviously contributing more compared to the person who has sent me the budget. That's what I'm just assuming just from them. I might be wrong, but I'm kind of looking at the numbers and that would probably make more sense to me. So in terms of the joint account with the income, it looks like they've put in a certain amount to go into that account. So for this one, it looks like 2,770 is the total for themselves and their partner. Now let's look down and see the needs, and they've got their mortgage, which is 853. They're not currently overpaying on their mortgage at the moment. They've got gas and electricity, building insurance, because obviously they have a mortgage, so you do need buildings insurance, which makes sense, life insurance, which is good, pet insurance, then they've also got vets for pets, they've got car insurance, they've also got a water bill, which it looks like there's two. I'm not sure why there's two, because one of them says July to February, so I'm not sure where that came from, but I assume, you know, they're both water bills, internet, council tax. Then they've also got nursery, which they're having to pay 480 for, which honestly, childcare is so expensive, especially in the Western countries, whether you're from the UK or the US. Childcare is just, it's crazy how expensive it is. So 480, I'm not sure how often, you know, their child might be going to nursery. It may not be full-time, it may end up being part-time, because I know people that spend over £1,000 just on childcare, and I would be keen to know if you currently have your kids in nursery, how much do you currently pay? It'd be interesting to know in the comments. Then they've also got food, household and pet, so I guess this is just more about running the household essentially, and they've got 450 for that. So the balance, it looks like after they've taken all their needs into consideration, is about 521. That's how much they have left once they pay for their essential bills. Now, in terms of looking at their needs, I don't think there's really anything that stands out to me where I'm like, oh, you could probably save money there. Maybe the car insurance, because obviously it looks like they're paying the car insurance monthly, so potentially they could think about paying for an annual car insurance, because usually when you do pay monthly you end up paying interest on top of that. So you could potentially make savings with that. And obviously if there are other areas like insurance, for example, just making sure that you look at comparison websites just to see if you can get a better deal elsewhere. But for me, I think the essential bills pretty much look normal. I think it would be good to know what's the split between food, household and pet. Like how much do you actually spend on each area? I think it'd be interesting to know if you break that down, how much you typically spend on that. Potentially you could make some savings there. Okay, let's have a look at wants. So they've got Netflix, which is $7.99. They haven't currently got anything for events. And then they also have fun/eating out. I would assume that this is maybe eating out for the both of them rather than themselves, because I think once we go into the personal account, we'll probably see a bit more. But again, I think the question maybe is in terms of you being together, are you realistically spending that 50, or does it feel like you're actually spending a bit more? Are there other things that you potentially have been spending money on that you haven't necessarily accounted for? That would just be my only question with wants, because I think what I'm seeing is that sometimes when we're doing our budget, we don't necessarily tend to actually include everything that we are doing during the month. And what I mean by that is, yes, we will always include our bills. We know exactly how much our rent or mortgage is. We know our utility bills. But I find that sometimes we're almost scared to put in our wants. We're almost scared to put in our discretionary spending, like, you know, going out to eat, or if you're going to meet friends, or if you're going to the cinema or anything like that. I think sometimes we're just a bit reluctant to put that in, but I would argue that it's actually doing you a disservice if you don't include that in your budget, because you then won't know the full picture in terms of what's going on with your finances. So if, for example, you tend to go out with your colleagues every other week, but you're not putting that in your budget, then if you find that you're not sticking to your budget, it's probably because you're not including that discretionary spending. So again, I'm not sure if that's literally all they spend in terms of their joint account, but what I would say is you want to just make sure that that is actually how much you typically spend when it comes to your joint account, because if you are spending a bit more, then I would personally be including that in your budget, just so that you're more aware of what's happening with your budget. Okay, so let's move down to the debt. So I assume that these are just minimum payments, so it doesn't look like they are making any extra payments. So they've got 40 for their credit card, so again, I assume that's a minimum payment. They've also got floor finance, so I assume this was maybe some home improvements and they took out finance for that. Sofa finance, again, this is probably, you know, maybe once they moved into their home, they ended up having to finance some things. And they do have a section for extra debt payments, but they're not currently putting anything into that at the moment. So I think what my question would be is, if you are looking to start paying off your debt, try and choose one debt and then, you know, focus on attacking that. Obviously, I don't know what the total debt is when it comes to the credit card or the finance stuff. But again, I think the question will be, do you want to pay that off? Because once you are then able to pay some of that off, you'll obviously have some extra money to then be able to put towards some savings, because you won't have any minimum payments anymore. So I think you want to think about, okay, if we do end up having some extra money, could we start putting that towards our debt? Let's move over to savings now. And we've got some sinking funds, which is great. So they've got a sinking fund for Christmas and birthdays. They're currently putting 100 into that. They also have a joint emergency fund, so they're currently putting 100 into that as well. They've got some child savings, so they've got 10 going into that. And they've also got 50 going into home improvement. So I assume that this will then take place instead of having to finance other stuff when they want to improve their home. So I think for me, like, the sinking funds definitely make sense, especially the, you know, Christmas and birthday funds, because sometimes I think we forget that Christmas comes around every single year and our birthdays come around every single year. So I like that they're preparing for this. Again, what my question would be is, when it comes to your budget, what do you actually want to prioritize? So do you want to prioritize the emergency fund? Do you want to prioritize the home improvements? Do you want to prioritize paying off the debt? I think it would be really good to be very clear on your goals, because then you can start putting more activity into that specific goal, and then once that goal is achieved, you can start moving on to something else. So that would be something to consider. And then they've obviously got some change left over after they've paid off all their bills, their wants, their debts, and their savings. So that is essentially the joint account. Let's have a look at the personal account and see what is happening there. Okay, so looking at the personal account, again, as I mentioned, I think what's typically happening here is they both get paid their salaries, and then they will put in a certain amount into their joint account, and then the rest of the money, that is theirs to spend on their personal account. So this person's salary is $1,650. They also have child benefit on top of that, so they get about $96 a month, I would assume, and so that's their income. So for them, they're currently bringing in about $1,746 in total. Obviously, I don't have the partner's bit, so I don't know how much they're making or how much they're spending, but we're going to focus on this person. So it looks like once they have their salary, again, they transfer $1,100 into the joint account, and so that's for all the joint stuff that we went through, so that's $1,100. And then they also have other things that they currently pay for. So in their needs, they also have a phone contract, it looks like, so they're paying $45.82. They've also got their car tax, so that's $28. They've got contact lenses as well, which is $12. Can I just say that for anyone who needs contact lenses or glasses, those are expensive too, because my husband has to get glasses, and sometimes he forgets to tell me so that I can make a sinking fund for them, which can be a little annoying. But these glasses be costing like $200 to $300, and I'm like, that's so expensive. So I definitely feel for you if you do need to use glasses, but obviously I just see contact lenses here. Anyway, we've also got union fees, so that's $16.40 that they pay, and then they also have petrol, which they pay around $70 a month. So it then leaves them, after paying all of that, with about $472 left over. Again, here, there's nothing that I would say that I'm concerned about. You know, maybe when it comes to your phone, after your contract, potentially you might decide to switch to a SIM only if your phone is fine and you don't need a new phone, so you could potentially make some savings there. But yeah, I don't see anything that kind of jumps out at me where I'm like, oh no, you could actually make a lot of savings here. I think this is all okay. Okay, so moving on to their wants, they've got $200 for their spending money, which I would assume then actually they're using more of their own spending money rather than putting money into their wants category in their joint account. So I think that definitely makes sense. Again, like, the question will be, do you typically just spend that on your joint account and then maybe you spend more money in your personal accounts? That could be something that you're doing. Or if it's likely that you're maybe doing both, like you are spending in your joint account and your personal account, then obviously you just want to make sure that your budget reflects that. But you know, $200 makes sense. And then also they've got $10.99 for Spotify, and that is all their wants currently. In terms of her goal, she's put an emergency fund, but she's not put any money in that. But I think the question is whether the goals that she has, is that for an individual emergency fund? Is that just for her emergency fund? Or is that for the joint emergency fund? So for them to have an emergency fund together, because obviously I see they've been putting $100 into their emergency fund pot in their joint accounts. So I think it would just be good to know, like, okay, what's this emergency fund for? Is it for the both of them, or does she want to create a separate one? But in terms of what she has left over, she has over $261, which I think is great. I think, again, the question is, okay, well, where do you want that money to go? Is that to also build an emergency fund? Do you have any specific sinking funds that you want to be saving for personally? So for example, with me, if you're subscribed to my channel, you would know that me and my husband pretty much join everything, but we do have separate personal accounts. So sometimes I'll have like small sinking funds in my personal account where I am saving up for like my friends' birthday presents, for example, or Secret Santa during Christmas time. So it could be that you decide to start doing sinking funds for your personal account. Again, that will depend on your goals. Or it could be that potentially you and your partner, if you both have money left over, you think about paying off some of the debts. Maybe it's the credit card, maybe it's the finance, whatever you want to prioritize. It could be that you start putting some of that extra money towards the debts so that you can pay it off and have some more money to also save. And also I would be questioning, I did see things like your mortgage overpayment in there. So again, is that a goal that you guys have? Do you want to pay off your mortgage quickly? And so do you want to start putting money aside? And if you look at some calculators as well, because I've been thinking about this, even if you put a small amount of money into overpaying your mortgage, it can make such a huge difference. So you really want to, I think about your goals, talk about what you want to prioritize, and then start thinking about where you want to put that extra money, especially if it's not just you that has extra money left over. If your partner has extra money left over, you can potentially bring that together and start, focusing on some of these goals. But I like the budget. I like the idea of splitting the needs and the wants. It's quite similar to how I categorize mine. So I typically do essential bills, sinking funds or debt overpayments, and then also just general spending, and that's pretty much just once basically. So it definitely makes sense. And yeah, I think the one takeaway would be really being clear on your goals, and if you do have the extra money, thinking about what you now want to focus on, because there are a few things that I think you could potentially look at. Now, if you need specific help when it comes to sticking to your budget so that you can actually save more money or even pay off debt, that's exactly what one-on-one coaching is for. So I have been able to help my clients not only create a budget that works for them, but we've been able to get really clear on their goals so they know exactly what they need to focus on, and so they've been able to then save a lot more money because of that. So if you are interested in one-on-one coaching, make sure you book a call with me to find out more about it. I'll link it up here for you and in the description below. But yeah, I do like this budget. I definitely like the layout, and I think if you can really get clear on your goals, then that is something that I feel like will be really helpful for your budget moving forward. So if you did like this video, then please do give me a thumbs up if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments, what changes would you make when it comes to this budget? I do post every Sunday, so if you would like to know more, then of course you can subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next week.